So, welcome, Executive Vice President Fitto. On behalf of the Special Committee on the Housing Crisis in the European Union, I really warmly welcome you to this important exchange of views. As Executive Vice President for Growth and Cohesion, you oversee crucial policy areas that directly impact our capacity to address the housing crisis across Europe. The coordination of cohesion policy, regional development funds, and the Recovery and Resilience Facility provides essential instruments for supporting affordable and sustainable housing solutions. Your role in ensuring that these various funding streams work together coherently is particularly relevant to our committee's mandate. Recent data shows that the housing crisis is not just a social challenge, but also an economic one that affects the Union's growth potential. Our committee is particularly interested in understanding how we can better utilize existing Union's funding instruments to support housing initiatives. The European Regional Development Fund, the Cohesion Fund, and the Recovery and Resilience Facility all have significant potential to address housing challenges. As we look towards the next multi-annual financial framework, your insights on how we might strengthen these instruments will be invaluable. We are also keen to explore how housing investments can contribute to broader Union's objectives, including territorial cohesion and sustainable urban development. The disparities in housing challenges between regions and between urban and rural areas make this a crucial aspect of cohesion policy. Your perspective on how we can ensure a balanced approach that addresses these territorial dimensions will be particularly valuable. So, Executive Vice President, we look forward to a productive discussion that will help inform our committee's work. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, dear Irene, honourable members. Thank you for this invitation. I welcome the creation of this special committee on housing. Housing is one of the most important challenges we face as a union today. It is a challenge that involves all different income levels, generations and geographical areas of the EU. The European Parliament plays a crucial role, and I look forward to a constructive dialogue with you in the coming weeks and months. To avoid repeating what my colleague Commissioner Jorgensen correctly mentioned regarding the strategic importance of the first European Affordable Housing Plan, I would like to focus on two main instruments under my responsibility. First is cohesion and second is RRF. In my mission letter, President von der Leyen entrusted me to ensure that Europe delivers concrete support and investment for member states, regions, local authorities and citizens, promoting economic and social convergence across the EU. Housing is central to this goal. Cohesion policy already plays a key role in supporting housing. In the current programming period, we are investing 7.5 billion euros in housing through 4 cohesion policy funds. With the national co-financing, the total investment reaches 10.5 billion euro. This support focuses mainly on 2 crucial areas: energy efficiency, improving the energy performance of homes across Europe not only benefits the environment, but also results in lower energy bills for families. This is particularly important in today's environment of high energy prices and insecurity about future costs. Second, social housing, the building of new housing units and the renovation of existing ones to ensure support for low-income families and special needs. But we need to do more, not only in the next MFF, but also right now, in the current programming periods. The mid-term review of cohesion policy. This is the perfect opportunity to adjust and align investments with emerging needs, as well as with the key European priorities, including affordable housing, expanding access to quality and affordable homes for all, the right to stay, ensuring citizens can live and work in the place they call home, and the agenda for cities, a strategic approach to urban challenges and opportunities. This is why I'm written to every Minister for Cohesion Policy and why I'm meeting them as well as the regional and the managing authorities both in Brussels and in my missions to the Member States. During these discussions, one of the key points of the agenda is affordable housing and the doubling of housing investments. But we must be realistic. Demand cannot be met only with EU funds and grants. More public and private investment must be mobilized. This is why we are working closely with the European Investment Bank to unlock additional financing for housing. Housing will play a central role not only in the mid-term review, but also in the future of cohesion policy. We are aware that we cannot afford to maintain the status quo. The world has changed, and the cohesion policy must change with it. On the issue of affordable housing, for example, cohesion policy will also have to evolve and recognize that the housing challenges in rural areas or islands are very different from the specific needs of urban areas. Different situations require tailor-made solutions. Housing is a prime example, but the need to modernize policy goes beyond these issues. We need to adapt it to the future challenges, ensuring that it remains impactful, responsive and fit for the future. On the resilience and the recovery facility, has supported key reforms and investment in housing that increase access to quality and affordable housing. 20.3 billion euros has been dedicated to housing. We have seen many examples across the Member States that show how the RFF is making a real impact, often in close collaboration with the regions and the municipalities. Our common goal is clear: to make affordable housing a reality across all regions, supported by a reinforced and relaunched cohesion policy. To achieve this, working together is crucial. Your ideas and input will be vital as we move forward to find solutions that drive real change. Thank you and look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you very much. We start our round of questions. The first round, let me remind you, you have 1.5 minutes for the question and 3 minutes reply by Executive Vice President. We start with the EPP, Nicolina Brunjak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice President Fitto. And thank you for being here with us again. So, as you said, the housing crisis in the European Union is affecting millions of families and young people, and the European economy and social model are under a strain, and Europeans are facing high housing, energy and food prices. Lack of quality jobs, opportunity, high cost of living increase the risk of brain drain and the depopulation in many European regions. How can we expect a more competitive Europe if we don't solve the problem which is weighing on our citizens' daily existence? Cohesion policy fundings must tackle demographic change and depopulation. So the EPP firmly believes that existing EU funds, particularly in ERDF, which you mentioned, must be used more strategically to finance affordably energy-efficient housing and urban development while reducing regional disparities. Our priority is therefore improving the market for affordable and accessible housing for low and middle-income households, with a special focus on ensuring that families with children and young people, as well as women and mothers, have access to affordable, energy-efficient and high-quality housing. I think we can agree that cohesion policy must play a central role in addressing housing shortages and ensuring equal opportunities across all regions. More importantly, there is no time to waste because we are at the risk of losing our young people in all our regions. Can you tell us how the Commission plans to speed up financing for affordable housing in the current multi-annual framework? And how does the Commission plan to simplify the procedures and ensure the faster, more flexible allocation of fundings for affordable housing in the next MFF? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that it's important to give a clear answer immediately. For this reason, I said before during my introduction that our work now is to organize a meeting with all governments because we have a golden opportunity now. The opportunity is the midterm review of the current programs of cohesion policy. It's important to underline that these programs were decided from 2019-2021 and were signed in 2022, are starting now. The midterm review, in my opinion, in our opinion, is a great opportunity to adapt this program at the new priorities. And one of these priorities is housing. And in the first meetings that I'm having with all member states, but not all member states, but it's important also to involve the regions, the cities, the local authorities. It's an important point is to give at these priorities an important role. I believe that it's possible to work in this direction, and the midterm review, I'm convinced that could be an important opportunity to give an immediate answer about this point.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Andreas Schieder for S&D.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President, to be with us here, and thank you what you already said in your introduction. And as you mentioned, also the huge amount of cohesion money which should be directed to housing. I have one question is how you will ensure that also the member states are then coming after and doubling this investment into affordable housing. Secondly, like this liquidity is injected into the market, how you will ensure that it's not feeding speculation, but on the other side is ensuring affordable housing which is provided to the middle and low income groups. And last question, what measures will you take to link the right to stay and the access to affordable housing, especially for vulnerable groups?
Yes, I think that the midterm review will be an opportunity to give this answer. Why? Because it's possible to share with the member states these priorities. Our idea is to share with the member state, and the meetings that we are having now is in this direction, to share the priorities and also to share the measures to put inside the midterm review. And I believe that this opportunity will be fundamental to guarantee this approach, to share with all member states. But for this reason, I want to underline an important point. During my first missions in these first weeks, I met, yes, in the member states, the national authorities, it's clear, but in all missions I met the representative of the other authorities, regional, president of regions and mayors, because this is important to have this multi-level approach. This is a fundamental in the cohesion policy, and I believe that this is an important point to have this guarantee about the points that you said before. And the other issues is an important approach for the different areas. I said in my introduction that we have two different approaches. One is the urban areas and the other is the internal rural areas. It's important to have the same approach general, but a tailor-made approach about the solution. And we have now an important question under the cohesion policy as a priority, because we have the 75% of the European citizens that live in the urban areas, in the cities. And we have the overpopulation and the consequence of this problem. And we have at the same time, in the internal rural areas, the problem of the depopulation. It's two phases of the same problem. It's important to give a common answer, but it's important to create under the midterm review the solution about two different approaches.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Antonella Sberna for ECR.
Vicepresidente, bentornato.
President, welcome back to our first meeting of the House Special Committee. First of all, thank you for what you mentioned about the management funds, specifically the cohesion policy. the work that you are carrying out is essential to ensure that the resources that the EU has have an impact, particularly when it comes to businesses and consumers. Today we are faced with a significant challenge. Housing affects European citizens, and the situation is particularly complex. We've already had a discussion with Commissioner Jurgensen, and we would like to launch a European plan for affordable housing. Now, having funds under the cohesion policy is clearly a step in the right direction, but I have a question. What timeline is foreseen for these announcements, which are obviously essential? And then it's also important to combine innovative instruments, ensuring public guarantees and incentives for sustainable investments. We need to strike a balance between accessibility and sustainability when it comes to investments. So, do we think that the European model is following this direction? And will it be able to follow the best practices already being implemented by certain member states? Thank you. Thank you. Now, when it comes to the timeline of the work that we are carrying out at the Commission, as you heard before me, the other commissioner with whom I am working with, he has a specific competence for housing. But with regards to my competences and the timeline of the midterm review, this might be quite short. We need to listen to other member states, but I think we're at a good point. And after meeting with the member states, we then need to identify priorities. So I've spoken about the regional policies, but the midterm review is a link between member states and the Parliament. And so when I think, when we talk about the time frame for housing, I think the Parliament should play a very important role here. So it's important that the Parliament always be informed, specifically this special committee, and then we can include any suggestions that you might have, and that can help us further in our work. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Barry Cohen for Renew.
Cohesion and reform in relation to developing our regions are vital to the potential in less populated regions. And you're right to mention the issue of energy potential. In the Midlands and West Coast, we have the Atlantic and West Coast. There's the potential to develop 70 gigawatts of power and potentially another 50 if wave energy projects materialise. That can power up to 40 million homes throughout Europe. That's a pan-European project that needs to be taken on board by the Commission, not only to meet the needs of our region and our country, but the potential to explore the ambition which can be derived in Europe and address the cruel dependency we were exposed to in relation to Russian gas. And it's that type of development which in turn will lead to private development in housing to meet the needs associated with the onset of industry, business and commerce in those regions. And that's the sort of joined-up thinking I would hope that this Commission will ensure, together with your colleague in housing, is paramount and pivotal to infrastructure development to meet the issue of competitiveness, which Draghi mentioned, is the cruel factor that is impinging Europe's ability to compete, whereby the US has energy 5 times less expensive than ours. And I implore you to address this issue, please.
Yes, I fully agree with you. I share your approach, your suggestion. I believe that it's important to work in this direction, and it's important to have an important and strong involvement of the European Investment Bank in this way, because it's crucial to enlarge our vision, not only with grant resources of the European Commission, but it's important to have this capacity to involve also other instruments. This is the particular approach, profile of the role of the Commissioner Jorgensen, because, as I said before, my role is to create the condition to adapt cohesion policy to this new priority, but also this point is important to adjust the current program, but in particular to create a condition for the next MFF, because the debate that we have now is for the midterm review of the current programs, and can be an important moment to create this condition. But, as you know, we are working for the next MFF. It's important to create this important connection, and I believe that we need flexibility about these measures, because it's important also to have this availability to give this clear, strong answer immediately, because this point are news in this debate, and it's important to not to wait some years, because it's impossible to wait some years. It's fundamental to have this important flexibility and to give immediately this kind of answer. This is our work, and thank you for your suggestion, but I repeat, I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gordon Bozanak for the Greens.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. And I really appreciate how you are emphasizing this golden opportunity of midterm review, like it's now or never to do something. And it's actually on the member states to make a step forward and to change their operational plan. So my first question to you is, do you have the first feedback? Are they doing that or not? And maybe to make aware of my colleagues, MEPs, that now it's really the time of us to press the member states to change operational plan. But if the member states will change the operational plan and request and put housing high as a priority, are you also ready to change legislation? So, you know, the current regulation on the ERDF has this famous, and the Cohesion Fund, has famous Article 7.5, exclusions of the using the money. The Cohesion Fund shall not support investments in housing, etc. So, if there will be high priority, are you also then ready to change this, to unlock the Cohesion Fund also for housing, investment in affordable housing, but also not to unlock it fully, so that we are sure that this money will, for example, go directly to the affordable housing of the, I don't know, cities and regions to build the new housing stock. So is the Commission preparing some legislational changes to be in compliance with the request of the member states that housing is a priority at the moment? Thank you.
Yes, one point is the midterm review. As you know well, because you are in the Regi Committee, and this opportunity is in the hand of the member states. But the idea of the European Commission is to push in this direction and to create this opportunity. I can update you about the first meetings, and I can say that the first meetings are very positive. The approach is in general open about from the member state, and I believe that we'll have a great opportunity to arrive at these results. It's not simple, but I repeat that until now the first approach is very positive, because I want to underline one point. The current programs, as I said before, were decided 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we are starting now. I think that the logical approach is to adapt these programs to the new priorities, and this is one of these. I think that could be possible also some legislative change if we have an agreement with the member states, because you said one important point, but we have probably the opportunity also to verify some other legislative change in this direction to adapt and to give immediately solution the questions that we say now. We'll see. This is our work, but I'm convinced that it's possible, and I'm confident about this work. We'll see in the next 2 weeks, because it's clear the midterm review, it's possible to give, to have an important contribution also, only, if we give an immediately answer, because the deadline is now, and the opportunity to adapt all programs is in these next 2 months, not in these years. This is an important point. And repeat, I'm confident and I believe that it's possible to arrive at this solution. But the involvement with the member states is fundamental, and it's fundamental also to share with the member states. But the last point is that about cohesion. My experience says that we have sometimes many voices. It's important to have only one voice with an important coordination, and it's important to share the priorities. And housing, in my opinion, and I am here to confirm this, it's an important, one of the most important priorities.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Irene Montero for the left.
Gracias, Presidenta, Vicepresidenta.
Thank you, Chair. Vice President, if it's important that everyone has the right to housing, food and water, but the problem here is speculation, and this is part of the problem. Speculators in Europe have been given the red carpet to illegally grab houses. For example, in Spain, 10 large speculators own a vast amount of housing. In 10 years' time, the young people in my country will have 10% less of purchasing power when it comes to buying homes. This is inciting hatred amongst others, because many foreign homeowners are coming in and stealing homes from Europeans. Vice President, I'd like to ask you, why are we not using the half of housing when it comes to investment funds? We must give houses to locals, and this also works hand in hand with the energy market. We mustn't evict people without giving them alternatives. We must guarantee the right to housing. But to do that, we need to stop housing being a business. Thank you.
Sì, grazie. Parto da un dato.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with some figures. We are all subject to member states, but I can say that I've only been in this role for a few weeks now, and I think that we are working in the right direction. Now, I think the objective here is to create conditions to increase investment in order to give a clear response. As I said, the Cohesion Fund is working in this direction, but we need to look at the positive investments that have been made, and there are many examples that can be identified, particularly when it comes to the RRF. So I think we need to be constructive, and in terms of my role, I am here to collaborate and work with you, and I look forward to receiving constructive contributions so that we can work together. Thank you.
Our second round of questions. Let me remind you, you have 1 minute for the question and then 2 minutes for the reply. I give the floor to Marco Falcone for EPP.
Thank you, Chair. Signor Vicepresidente.
Vice President, you mentioned a multi-level approach between Europe and member states. And I think that this is an appropriate, useful, and interesting approach. However, if we want housing, if we think housing is essential for all families, we need to look at financial policies. You mentioned reviewing the cohesion policy, but I have a specific question. What measures can be implemented with European financing that go beyond state aid so that we can help families, particularly single-income families, so that we can avoid overpopulation, or rather depopulation, in rural areas? As I said earlier, we need to look at the facts. When it comes to cohesion policy and the RRF, we're talking here about 30 billion euros. That's not enough, but at the same time, it's not exactly peanuts. We need to look at conditions here, and the EIB is a very important instrument. It can have secondary effects when it comes to using these resources, and if it is used strategically, like I said in an answer earlier, this is two sides of the same coin. We've got the great issue here of cities and urban areas, where the vast majority of citizens live. But then we have this overpopulation, and that causes a lot of organisational issues when it comes to services. And again, housing is part of this. But then at the same time, we've got more isolated areas, and they require more coordinated measures from the cohesion policy so that we can give a complete answer. We need to look at infrastructure, services, and housing. Something I want to underscore here is related to the work that we are carrying out over the next few weeks, which is the cities agenda. I think Chair Tinan, you mentioned this earlier, but this could be a time to together look at how we can include this policy agenda in our work. I think that would be very important. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Marco Vesli-Gai for S&D.
Thank you, and thank you, Vice President Fitto, for joining us today. I would like to address two cases and hear your maybe more concrete plans to deal with them. The first issue is of youth housing, and the second is the housing in rural areas. I just presented a research which we did in Croatia, which showed that 70% of the young people are unable to afford housing, and other statistics shows that the situation is equally bad across Europe. This research also showed that large majority, over 60%, expect concrete measures to address this. Second topic is rural housing and the overall rural development, which can be seen as a potential to solve the housing issues we are facing. If we invest in rural areas, we can attract more people into these areas and thus maximize rural potential. Here we need to be aware of the crucial role of the local authorities for housing potential. I urge you not to leave the rural communities out of the new housing framework. I'm very glad that you are mentioned a few times the importance of these areas and their development, and I appeal to you to implement the youth test across all measures you plan to put forward. I think it's the only way we will truly make sure that our EU citizens has a roof over their head. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, and for me it's important to underline another important point in the vision of agriculture and food for the next 5 years, together with Commissioner Hansen. As you know, in my executive vice president, we have in my cluster the coordination about agriculture, tourism, transport, fisheries, and blue economy. A common vision about all these matters can be an important solution about this point. And in rural areas, this is fundamental. In this vision, we underlined exactly this point. There is an important part dedicated to the rural areas. And in our approach of cohesion policy, I convinced that this is an important point for the future, because if we want to give a strong answer about the differences that we have, to reduce the differences, and this is the first point of the cohesion policy, it's fundamental to go in this way, to create a different approach in the rural areas and the islands. And we have also different situations. For example, I went in one of my missions in Finland to Lapparanta, at the border with Russia. The external border regions is a full difference that the south of Spain or Italy or Greece. But it's important to have the common approach, but a different solutions, a tailor-made solution, because we have in the internal rural areas different situations. But I fully agree with you about this approach, and I confirm that it's fundamental for us, for the European Commission, to give this solution. And I want to remember that this is an important priority of the guidelines of President von der Leyen.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we start the third round, which is based on Catch the Eye. I have many requests, but we do have some time if you stay in the time. So we have like 1 minute each for both a question and answer. So I would like to give you the floor individually, not like before where I had to group in 4, but please stay in the time. Jana Thun, Renew. Tom.
Yes, thank you very much. In fact, more or less everything which I wanted to ask was already asked, but if I am not mistaken, you did not mention public-private partnership. How do you see their role in injecting liquidity into the housing market? You also mentioned close cooperation with European Central Bank and Investment Bank. Can you please elaborate a bit on that? And my main concern is, to be honest, this is the huge promise we're making by creating this committee and by what was promised by Ursula von der Leyen. We have some success stories, of course, but we also have some not so successful stories here. So I have a very personal question. On the scale from 1 to 10, how optimistic is Vice President Fitto on this task? Thank you.
But in general, I am optimistic. But in this case, it's important to be realistic, also to be realistic. It's not a simple challenge, but I believe that if we work together in the same direction, it's possible to have a positive solutions, to give a positive answer in this direction. I believe that the work that we are making now about the midterm review can be an important step in this direction. And also the work that Commissioner Jorgensen for the all measures inside the plan of housing could be another important opportunities. And we are starting now with this approach, this new approach, and I am confident that it's possible to arrive at important results. And for me, it's very important, this committee, because can be an important instrument to push in this direction. It's necessary to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Isabelle Le Kalinek for EPP.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Chair. In an EPRS study, no less than 14 instruments are mentioned: the RRF, the ERDF, the Cohesion Fund, the ESF+, the GDF, InvestEU, Horizon Europe, TSE, the Single Market Programme, AMIF, Social Climate Fund, Modernisation Fund, LIFE Programme, a facility, and then the EIB. Do you not think that some of these funds should be streamlined or merged? Because I think that all of these funds are more burdensome. do you intend to evolve the access criteria to these funds and simplify access to them in general? Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, because your list of funds is a clear answer about the needs that we have to change this approach. And we have an important opportunity in this commission, because, as you know, we have a commission for simplification. We are working, last week we approved the first proposal in this way, and I believe that in the new approach and the modernization of cohesion policy, it's possible, it's necessary to create a different solution, because also under cohesion policy it's necessary to have a common vision, to have a simplification. But about this issue of housing, it's important to make this work with all other funds, and I agree with you.
Thank you very much. Regina Doherty for EPP.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Commissioner. There's plenty of countries across the EU are struggling to build houses because we're delayed by regulatory burdens, the high cost of materials, etc. The planning process is kind of grinding to a halt because of some of our regulations. So I know competency lies with the Member States, but the European single market plays a real big role in how much materials cost, the quality standards that we have, the supply chains and the access to finance. So I'm wondering, in the next 6 to 12 months, what are the concrete steps that the Commission is going to take to unburden the regulatory process, to make sure that we have the best priced cost materials that we can across the EU and not to add unnecessary costs to the overall process?
These problems, as you said, is a problem of the Member States. It's in general. I think that it's possible to give the priorities with the Member States, to share this common approach, common vision, to try to go in this way. And this is our priorities and our approach, but it will be fundamental to share with the Member States these solutions. And for my side, about my responsibility, I believe that could be possible to start well with the midterm review of cohesion programs, because it could be a solution not only to give more resources, but it's possible also at the same time to can imagine some legislative changes in this direction. We'll see, but it will be fundamental to share with the Member States.
Okay, thank you very much. Now Isilda Gomez, SND.
Senhor Vice-Presidente, muito obrigada. Há pouco fez aqui uma afirmação que também foi feita pelo seu anterior colega quando esteve.
Now, other speakers have talked about the fact that housing is a competence of the Member States. But we should acknowledge that in some Member States, 2% of the housing is built by the public authorities, and in other Member States, 30%. So it can't be a matter solely for the Member States to decide. The last government had 2 billion, spent 2 billion euro from the RFF on housing, and I was responsible for this for housing in my city, and I signed contracts so that more housing was built in my area. But that shows that it's only with European assistance that the targets, the cohesion cohesion targets can be achieved. Because cohesion also means equality among citizens. So my question is, are there plans in place for more flexibility regarding investments and the release of funds from the cohesion funds? Those are also European funds. Could they not be used for housing purposes. Could we not have some flexibilization or even create incentives? Can you see to creating this possibility? Thank you.
Parto da quello che stiamo facendo già.
It's part of what we're already doing now in terms of the cohesion policy. So this flexibility, this possibility is something we're trying to set up in relation to in coordination with the competence of the member states, but trying to get resources into those areas. Regarding strike, it's a question of strike and balance. And as the question of the RFF is different because that measure was a problem of reforms, investments, which was coordinated by the European Commission and with a whole dynamic which is different from the ordinary funds. But if you want my view, having played the role of cohesion minister for the RFF up to last year, I think that some elements of the governance there from the RFF could also be used in some aspects of this in order to speed up the expenditure in terms of some types of investment. We can look to that in the future.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Vice President, good to see you again. My questions are very simple because most of the good questions have been made already. You've mentioned some legislative changes in order to address this issue. Can you give us an example? As you know, our country, Portugal, is living a deep housing crisis at the moment. So to give positive answers back to my voters, back to our citizens, it's really important to keep the European flame alive, the European hope alive. So you mentioned some legislative changes. Can you give us one example for me to go back home and tell our citizens? And then I have to ask if there's a possibility for the European Regional Development Fund to have a broader framework regarding the possibility of financing social and affordable housing. You've mentioned, and I think you're totally right, that we should have the same approach but tailor-made solutions. But how can we define an operative concept of affordable housing when we all have different concepts of affordable housing in our member states? Thank you.
I said before that I'm meeting all ministers, and for example, with the Minister of the Portuguese government, I had a meeting some days ago, and we are starting in this work. I believe that it's possible to adapt the current programs to these new priorities like this, and I hope that it will be possible to close this agreement to give this answer also in your country. I believe that it's possible, and the meeting with all ministers in general, but in particular in this case, was very positive, and I'm confident that it's possible to give this solution.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor Daniel Buda, EPP.
Mulțumesc, doamna președinte, mulțumesc, domnule comisar. Câteva realități pe care nu le putem ignora, domnule comisar. Potrivit OCDE.
Thank you. According to the OECD, we had a rise in the price of housing, 37% over the last 5 years. Wages haven't kept pace. And at the same time, last year in Romania, in France, but also in Germany, the number of planning permissions has declined sharply. So what are your conclusions? What are our conclusions? There has been an increase in housing costs, but there's also been an increase in bureaucracy in terms of delivering planning permission. So you can't say that this is a national competence because the member states have just failed in this. So that is why we're talking about housing today, because if the member states had done their job, then the situation would be different. So as to solutions, I want to emphasize one aspect, which is the need not to lose sight of public-private partnerships with cities, with local authorities, to develop infrastructure. Question. Access is very important in terms of sites that could be used for business.
Sono d'accordo, ma
I agree, but it's clear that the competence still remains with the member states. So we have to try and find a solution to in the same direction as the member states. There's no other way. But at the same time, I think that activating public-private partnerships is, by arrangement with the member states, could represent a good solution in that direction. We would have to confirm how the investments would be organized and so on, but in all the meetings I've had up to now, no member state, I still haven't met all of them, but almost all of them at this stage, almost all governments have been very open and aware as to how important a response is. So we have to work in this direction.
Grazie. Diputada Staras.
Sí, gracias, presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I come from the Mallorca and the Balearic Islands. We have a huge problem, and that is that the police and so on and Guardia Civil can't work in Ibiza because they can't afford an apartment, and other public services too are suffering as a result in the Balearic Islands. So therefore we need some flexibility in this regard. The first thing to be done would be to simplify the bureaucracy, because with all the red tape that's there, it's very hard to change things. Second thing is that we need legal certainty, because you've a huge problem with illegal occupation in Spain. You've hundreds of thousands of squats in Spain, and this disincentivizes investment in the market. You have to also look at this matter. We also need aids for young people and for vulnerable groups such as people with disabilities. Currently in Spain, it's young people are leaving home at the oldest of any European country. Thank you. Thank you. Your question about vulnerable groups and young people and disabled, that obviously needs a response, and that's in the priorities. That has to be in there. And the islands too, yes indeed, that is a particular need. And not all islands are equal. There are examples that show that we need different approaches through size, characteristics, issues. Islands have huge potential, and we need responses to resolve the issues and the infrastructural problems if they continue to exist and support the population. We have to look at transport too, and we need to work in that direction too. In the midterm review, certainly, and in terms of the future also of the cohesion policy and budget policy.
Marza for the Greens.
Gracias, señora presidenta, señor comisario.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner. In the Regional Affairs Committee, you were recently meeting various mayors who asked for specific measures in terms of for housing, and they sent you a letter where they asked two questions. To the question of borrowing for housing needs. And then the funds going directly to the regions for the housing needs. So what mechanism can you create for that? And could it be the European Urban Initiative so that the funds go directly to the cities where the housing is needed?
L'agenda per le città.
The city's agenda is one of the most important discussion points, and that we have to define the role of the cities. Has been, I said in another earlier answer, in all my jobs. I've always met the mayors and as well as the government representatives, because I feel they're essential. And in the Regional Affairs Committee too, I attended various debates. The last one during when the new president was elected, and we agreed on a common platform, because the role of that group at the cities is very important. But at the moment, we don't have direct funds for the cities and the regions. But in my hearing last November, I did say that this is it's an important matter, and discuss this many times with the Regi Chair. And some programs need to be directly managed. There's something that has to be looked at together with the member states. So the city's agenda could be one way of setting priorities and highlighting then the role of the cities, and thirdly, to find a working method which would allow this to be done. So my approach to all of this is very open.
Okay, we have completed our various rounds of no? Ah. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, there was a miscommunication. You're not done yet. So, okay. We have 3 more people. I apologize, but the break confused me. Okay.
Another debate.
Yeah. Georgios Aftias for EPP.
Dear colleague.
So, both of us have to do with islands. You're from Italy, I'm from Greece. You visited my country recently. Can you hear me? Do I need to say it again? You are an Italian. I know you have a special interest for the islands. I come from Greece. 450 islands, 14,000 kilometers of coastline. There are a lot of problems. Every year we have doctors, firemen, nurses that are transferred, and they cannot find a place to stay. So the question is, beyond subsidizing the rent, can we also subsidize housing in hotels, especially during the summer months when the population of the islands grows? I know you're thinking about it because you are facing similar problems in Italy, and we heard it about Spain a while ago.
Well, thank you. I went in Greece 2 weeks ago. Was a very positive mission. During my visit, I met Prime Minister, some ministers, President of regions, but I had an important meeting with the mayors of the island and with Minister Stylianides. It was a very positive meeting, and I believe that we understand how is important, as particular, the situation of your country. As you said, it's clear that the approach about the islands in your country is different than other countries, also for the islands. And when I said before that it's important to have a tailor-made approach under all matters, I wanted to say this. And your country is a clear example in this direction. But in this midterm review, but in the future of cohesion policy, will be fundamental to have an important role about the islands, and as I said before, also for the questions about Mallorca and Spain, I believe that it's fundamental to have this approach. And for me, will be a priority, the points of islands. Also about islands, we have different needs, because we have the big islands, little islands, outermost regions, and other different issues. It's important to have an approach that is also in this case a tailor-made approach. And this is the reason that it's clear how is important cohesion policy, because this approach is possible only with the cohesion policy.
Thank you very much. Alicia Holmes-Ginel, SND.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. In order for our cohesion policy to contribute to ensure the right to decent housing, which is what we're dealing with in this committee, it's key that the funds, apart from increasing them, which one thing's going on, are reach their goal and that they are destined to inclusive, decent housing, or else we run the risk of rather than finding a solution, making things worse. So how are you going to ensure that the member states use these funds to invest in social housing and do not use it for purposes that might increase the speculation and worsen the problem, and that the funds don't end up, that is, in the wrong hands? Thank you.
Dobbiamo trovare delle soluzioni.
We have to find clear solutions in relation to the funds, and I agree with you. It's right and necessary that we avoid this risk. So we need to work to ensure that there are criteria in the use of these funds, agreed with the member states, that go along those lines. So the midterm review could be a good opportunity to do that, because that's an opportunity to update the existing programs and to lay down conditions which will ensure these criteria also for the future European budget and the future cohesion policy. Earlier I said it's important to modernize cohesion policy, and that's one of the key themes of the modernization. That's to ensure that the cohesion policy is brought into line with the new needs, and this is one of them. So we need to agree on this with the member states. No, at the moment we have a commissioner dealing with this. We have a clear we need for a clear plan, and we need all the member states to be involved, they've all perceived the need, and the whole European Commission to agree the strategy. So we all have to work on this together, and we have to monitor it together, and with the Parliament too. I was in this Parliament for 3 terms, so I know very well that the Parliament must play a very important and constant scrutiny role, and I have great confidence in the joint work with you in this regard.
The floor to Maravillas Abadia Hover, EPP.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice President. Apart from the fact that the cohesion policy also already has funds for social housing and affordability, it's true that access to affordable housing is still a huge problem for millions of Europeans. And it's not just a question of social policy. It also affects groups which we would normally regard as vulnerable, and the cohesion policy can do more. It could help to mitigate one of the biggest problems, which is the costs associated with housing. And with investments in efficiency, you could help to reduce the rent charges. However, bureaucracy is still holding up the arrival of the funds and jeopardizing the projects that might work. We need effective policies so that resources are well used and don't get blocked in interminable bureaucracy. So I would ask that the cohesion policy should not yield to all these pressures of one fund for all. We should reflect how it might be made more flexible, more nimble, so that the funds arrive earlier and have a real impact. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that the principal work that we are making is to modernize cohesion policy. We have 2 possibilities now. One is to defend the current situation, and the risk is that we have a big problem with the cohesion policy, or to modernize cohesion policy. I believe that this is the goal that we'll realize, and will be fundamental to give this answer in this direction. The midterm review is the opportunity to realize this project. It's not a simple work because it will be necessary to share with the member states, to involve, in my point of view, the European Parliament, the Committee of Regions, the President of Regions in all member states, in each member states, the mayors, because it's possible to start with this important reform of cohesion policy together. And this is our challenge. Housing is one part of this new approach that will make about cohesion policy and its reforms. This is the crucial point that we have now, because in my opinion, the midterm review is an opportunity to start with this work. And we'll see the result in this direction. I think that it will be fundamental to have a right approach by member states in particular. But I said before that I'm confident because we are aware that this is probably the fundamental call for cohesion policy. And I hope also that your contributions will be fundamental, like today in this debate. Thank you.
Okay, I have one last request from Charan Mololi, Renew. Very briefly.
Commissioner Fitto, just one question, and it has not been mentioned today. I think it's important to ask this question with regard to housing. The right to independent living and community inclusion for the European Union's 101 million citizens with disability is enshrined in Article 19 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. Yet in practice, thousands remain in settings that do not reflect their needs or wishes, often due to a lack of appropriate housing and support services. You mentioned special needs in your comments earlier. Cohesion funds have been important in that area. I ask you, especially when you go to our member states, to emphasise the serious need to accommodate people with special needs and with disabilities who are often living in nursing homes and other centres that are not appropriate. They are entitled to live in home. It is their right. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree with you. We must be this attention, and for me it will be fundamental to confirm this. I agree with you. It's a logical approach and a right approach about this point. Thank you very much.
We are about to close. If you really have a 20 seconds question, I can give you the floor. Mrs. Junco Garcia.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you. Very briefly, I agree with my colleagues about this squatting in Spain. It's a disaster, and I'm also about the supply of housing and these protections when 10 years go and rents go back to the market rates. So the dwellings are no longer protected in terms of the rent. We have 240,000 municipal authorities in Spain. So when it comes, that's a big problem in Spain with cohesion funds. Now, they're talking about reducing the number of municipalities in Spain, but it's crazy. And I think the European Commission should do something about this because it's completely unviable. And this is ripe terrain for speculation. Thank you.
Sì, posso capire la critica, ma
Yeah, I understand the criticism, but it's no way our competence. Imagine if the European Commission started getting into the sorting out the municipalities and member states. Imagine what a hornet's nest that would be. We can't do that, but we can work hard to agree criteria and choices that might make a contribution at a homogeneous contribution at European level, but on a shared basis with the member states.
Thank you very much. We've finished our time. Thank you all for the attendance, the interest, the participation. This was our first hearing. I think there was a great interest, but this is just the beginning. So please keep coming because there's more to come. Have a nice evening.
That's it.